4 tips for picture book authors. Now, a number of years ago I had created a training course on how anyone could create illustrations for their picture books, and in that time I was doing a lot of reading in forums and blogs just to see what picture book authors were actually doing, how much were they paying for illustrations and all those different things, and I found that they made 4 big mistakes, and that's what I'm going to be covering in this video. Now, the first one was, and this was probably the biggest one, was that they were paying a fortune for illustrations. It wasn't unusual to go into some forums and find out maybe somebody had paid a couple of $100s to an illustrator to illustrate their book. Again, I've nothing against illustrators, but you have to think about it as a business kind of thing. If you imagine you paid, say, maybe $300 for your illustrations for your book, again, that is cheap in some cases, but if you paid $300 for the illustrations of your book, and if you were maybe going to Amazon Kindle store or going to some place, whatever platform you plan to sell your book, if you only made, for example, maybe £1 or $1 on each copy of that book, you have to remember that you're going to have to sell 300 copies of that book just to break even. Everything after that then is going to be a profit. Now, if you are a first-time author, can you really imagine selling 300 books out of the gate from a standing start where nobody knows you, you've got no audience, you've got no following or anything like that? Can you really expect to get that $300 back? Now, it may be a long time maybe marketing that book and promoting it, and you may get that money back, but how long is that going to take you? Have you got the money then to put that into book 2? And again, unfortunately, a lot of those authors weren't actually planning out, how they were going to recoup that money. They were just simply throwing that money into it. And again, if you had a business like that, if you imagine throwing money into a business and the money wasn't coming back in to replace that, how long would that business last? You'd have to close the door, you'd go bankrupt in no time. But unfortunately, a lot of those, picture book authors weren't thinking about that. So that is one thing I would highly recommend you do, is to control your expenses. Again, if you need to get a course like my own, pick up something where you can do your own illustrations, or hire somebody who can do them cheaply for you. Because if you don't, and you let those costs spiral out of control, how are you really ever going to make a profit on that book? Now, it's okay if it is going to be like a vanity thing where you're just going to tell the world, well, I have written and published a children's picture book. That's fair enough if it's a one-off. But if you are planning to do it long term and make money on it long term, you need to control your expenses. So be aware of how much you are going to pay for your illustrations, and are you going to be able to get all that money back? Now, another thing I seen too was a lot of those authors were simply going around knocking on doors looking for traditional publishing contracts. They would ask, where will I go to get my picture book published? And unfortunately, these people would probably spend weeks, months knocking on door after door, probably getting rejected everywhere, until eventually maybe somebody might come along and say, yes, I will publish your book. Whereas if you maybe would rather go down the self-publishing route and self-publish that book yourself, you could have that book out there a lot earlier. You could have it out earning you money, rather than wasting all the times and the weeks and the months banging on doors hoping that somebody is going to publish your book for you. Instead of doing that, take it into your own hands and publish the book yourself, and you'll see quickly then if that book was a flop. I can imagine if you maybe spent weeks and months trying to get a traditional publishing contract and that book was released and it was a total flop, how much time had you wasted between then until the book had come out to find that out? Wouldn't it be much better if you maybe self-published your book and found that out in a couple of weeks' time, rather than waiting weeks and months? So that's another thing you should think about if you are self-publishing a children's picture book, publishing a children's picture book. Go down the self-publishing route rather than traditional, especially if you're starting off with no audience. And again, it's another way of reducing your costs. Now, another thing I seen too was, unfortunately, those authors were only looking at their book as just that. If you imagine, if I'm releasing a book, I can only make income on that book. But if I repurpose that book into as many different forms as I can make more money out of it. Now, to explain that a little bit better, if you imagine maybe the Disney business model, not only does Disney release the movie, but they also release the merchandising to go with it. So we have the toys, we have the backpacks, we have posters, stickers, all those different things. So even if maybe the movie wasn't successful, like say for example, I think one of the Cars movies wasn't wasn't a huge success, but they made a fortune on the back end with all the merchandising, all the pencils and colouring books and all those different things with the cars, illustrations all over it. So think about that if you are, or if you've already published a book. There's no reason why you can't have your own merchandising line to go with that book. If the illustrations are really, really good, would they look good on a t-shirt? Would they look good on a backpack? Maybe a coffee cup? Could you create some teddies or stickers or something like that? Now, if that's something that you might be interested in, but you just don't know how to do it, I highly recommend you go to maybe a website like Cafe Press, or there's another one called redbubble.com. Try either of those, and what you can do is you can create your own merchandising line. So even if your book isn't as successful, you never know, you might be more popular, or it might be more successful as a line of t-shirts, copybooks, stickers, or all those different things. So don't just think about making a profit from the book on its own, because as I said, sometimes it is difficult to make money from a picture book. How long is it going to take you to get that money back in? But at least if you have a couple of other income streams coming from that book, you can make more money and you can get that money in faster. So think about that. Think about maybe just looking outside the book. Think about the Disney kind of business model. How can you create maybe a merchandising line or anything like that you can make more money off? And again, another thing then, finally, the last thing was I'd seen a lot of picture book authors would only write and release one picture book and expect to retire on that. Now, there might have been a good reason why they didn't create or release book 2 or book 3, probably because they ran out of money. The first book cost that much, and maybe they've seen how difficult it was to market it. So at that stage then it really soured them off that notion of being a picture book author. But if you are somebody who is serious about that, I'm here to tell you that you can't retire one book. You need to have a collection of books. Again, they could be the same characters. You could have maybe prequels or sequels like the movies, or you could maybe have some character coming up again and again in different scenarios. So try and think, how can I create a collection of books? I'm publish those books regularly, because if you have an audience or looking to build an audience, they are going to, once they've bought book 1, they're going to be looking for book 2 or book 3, especially if they like the work that you're putting out. So think about that. How can you create a collection of books? How can you do it regularly? Again, the self-publishing route is probably the best one to go down, because you don't have to wait for approval for anyone. If you wanted to release a new book tomorrow or next week, it's up to you. It's all in your hands, rather than relying on somebody else to give you the okay or the thumbs up and say, yes, we will release that book for you. So those are 4 things you need to be aware of if you are going down the route of being a self-published author, or a picture book author, is control your costs, think outside the book, more income streams. Go down the self-publishing route rather than traditional. At least it'll allow you to test ideas quickly. And then don't expect to retire on one book. Try and get as many books out there, because if you can imagine, if you've got 10 books in the Amazon Kindle store or whatever platform you're looking to sell on, you have a better chance of somebody finding you in the search results, rather than if you only had one book and you're very, very hard to find then. So if you are somebody who is a picture book author, maybe try out some of those tips. Or if you've already done it, maybe try and branch out with some merchandising line or anything like that to see if you can recoup the money back that you paid for those illustrations. So as always, if you'd like to ask me a question, you'd like me to cover something in an upcoming video, you're very welcome to reach out to barryjmcdonald@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to know where all these videos are and the podcast episodes and everything else I do, you're very welcome to do a search for WriteCome. That's WriteCome.com. Now, on the WriteCome site at the moment, we have a great free report, and it's called Words to Wealth. And in it, I'm going to show you 10 different ways you can make money from your keyboard, and you don't even need to be an expert author. And one of the things I do show you in that report is how to create your own merchandising line. So if that's something you'd like to maybe find out more about, head over to the WriteCome site now, download the free report, and let me know how you get on with it. And as always, thanks for sharing your time again today. Take care, have a great day. Bye bye.